Okay, so I want you to imagine waking up on just, a random Tuesday,
Right.
and it's the year 2026. You pour your morning coffee, you sit down at your laptop, and you get this company-wide email.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and it announces that half of your middle management team has just been let go,
Wow. Just like that.
just gone. But, and here's the kicker, they haven't been replaced by outsourced labor or like a new crop of executives. They have been entirely replaced by an artificial intelligence.
Which is, I mean, that's a terrifying thought.
Right. And then imagine fast forwarding just one more year.
Yeah.
So it's 2027, you're sitting in an HR office, and your employer slides a contract across the desk.
Okay.
They're asking you to license your digital persona. So basically an AI clone that's been trained on your specific expertise, your problem-solving style, your communication habits.
Your entire work brain.
Exactly.
Like,
Also, the company can keep you working on their servers long after you actually retire.
honestly, it sounds like the plot of a dystopian film.
It really does.
Like, you hear those scenarios and your stomach instantly drops. But here's the reality, and this is what we're getting into today. These aren't science fiction scripts.
No, they're not.
They are actual data-driven projections from some of the world's leading economic and technological institutions.
And that is exactly what we are dissecting today. But real quick, before we get into it, I want to enthusiastically welcome you to the Dale English Class channel.
Yes, welcome.
If you are as, insanely curious about where the world is heading as we are, we want you to navigate this future with us.
Absolutely.
So hit that like button right now, drop a comment with your thoughts as we go, share this video with a friend who needs to hear it, and absolutely do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support really means everything to us.
It really does. Because today we are embarking on a massive, in-depth exploration of how AI is fundamentally rewriting the rules of the labor market.
The whole game is changing.
It is. Corporate structures, the global economy, all of it. We're looking at a stack of incredibly dense research here.
Oh yeah, we've got, what, the World Bank, the IMF.
McKinsey, Gartner, all to figure out exactly what the future of your daily work actually looks like.
We are definitely cutting through the noise today. But, to really understand radical ideas like algorithmic bosses or digital avatars, we first have to understand the mechanics.
Right. How?
Exactly. We need to look at exactly how AI interacts with human tasks on a fundamental level. And looking at the research, particularly this really extensive paper on Arceev by David Margaret, and a comprehensive analysis from OpenAI.
There's a massive historical misconception that we need to shatter right out of the gate.
Yes. Lay it on us.
So historically, when we think of technological revolutions, we instinctively think of machines replacing physical labor.
Like factory workers.
Exactly. Or highly routine administrative work. We picture the factory robot taking over the assembly line or, the automated telephone system replacing the switchboard operator.
Right, the blue-collar jobs.
But the data shows us that generative AI, and specifically large language models or LLMs,
Like ChatGPT.
right, they are operating on a completely different axis. LLMs are essentially pattern recognition engines for human thought and language.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And because of that, they aren't coming for the factory floor. They are coming for the knowledge worker.
And the scale of this shift is it's staggering. Like, let's look at the numbers for a second. The OpenAI paper estimates that 80% of the U.S. workforce will have at least 10% of their tasks affected by these LLMs.
80%.
Yeah. And 19% of workers will see at least half of their daily tasks impacted.
Which is a huge chunk of your day.
It really is. And if we look at McKinsey's data, they are projecting that generative AI could take over tasks accounting for almost 30% of all hours worked in the U.S. economy. And that's by the year 2030.
Which is right around the corner.
Yeah.
But the crucial distinction here, and this is what Margaret's research focuses on so heavily, is the difference between two specific mechanisms.
Okay, break that down.
So we have automation AI and augmentation AI. And these dictate exactly how a worker experiences this technology. Right.
Automation AI substitutes human labor. It takes a discrete task you used to do, removes you from the equation entirely, and just completes it for you.
So you're out of a job, basically.
For that specific task, yes. But augmentation AI, on the other hand, enhances your existing output. It acts as a multiplier for what you are already capable of producing.
Okay, I love analogies, so let me try to put it this way. Automation is like a self-driving car completely replacing a taxi driver.
Right.
The human is no longer needed in the loop, the car just drives itself. But augmentation is like putting a knowledge worker inside an Iron Man suit.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right, because you are still the one flying the suit, you're making the strategic decisions, but suddenly you have superhuman strength, speed, and analytical processing power.
That is the perfect way to visualize the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is the economic fallout of these two different mechanisms.
Yeah, so. Because they are effectively polarizing the workforce. The data shows this really surprising reversal of historical trends. Today, it's actually the high-wage, high-skill jobs that are the most exposed to AI.
Wait, really? Like who?
We're talking STEM fields, legal professionals, senior business analysts.
Which initially feels completely backward. I mean, you go to school for 8 years to be a corporate lawyer, and the AI is coming for you first, rather than the entry-level data clerk.
I know it sounds wrong, but it's coming for those highly educated professionals primarily in the form of augmentation, the Iron Man suit.
Ah, okay.
Think about how a lawyer actually works. A huge portion of their time is spent reading thousands of pages of case law just to find a single precedent.
Right. Endless reading.
But when that high-skilled worker uses an AI to instantly synthesize that case law, their productivity just skyrockets.
Because they don't have to read for 10 hours.
Exactly. They can take on far more complex litigations, serve more clients, and because those high-level strategic skills are already in short supply, their wages actually go up.
Because they're doing the work of 10 lawyers now.
Right. They become hyper-valuable to their firm. But for lower-skilled occupations, the AI exposure leans heavily toward pure automation, the self-driving car.
Oh, I see.
And that mechanism displaces labor entirely. It reduces the market demand for those specific human roles and puts severe downward pressure on both their employment opportunities and their wages.
So we're looking at a scenario where AI drastically widens the existing gap. The people who are handed the Iron Man suits just soar, and the people competing against the self-driving cars get left behind.
Exactly. It creates a bifurcated economy. It worsens wage inequality by simultaneously boosting the earning potential at the top and automating the foundational roles at the bottom.
Okay, but wait. If augmentation AI gives all these individual workers an Iron Man suit, right, making them massively more productive, autonomous, capable of analyzing their own data, what happens to the people whose entire job is just to manage those workers?
Well, that brings us to one of the most disruptive predictions in our source material. We have to look at the findings from Gartner's AI predictions and the OECD's research on what they term algorithmic management.
Okay, and this is where things get slightly terrifying, honestly. Gartner predicts that by 2026, 20% of organizations will use AI to flatten their corporate structures.
Right.
And in doing so, they could potentially eliminate more than half of their current middle management positions.
More than half. And to understand how that actually works day to day, you have to think about the traditional function of a middle manager.
What do they actually do all day?
Right. A large percentage of their day is spent acting as a human router. They collect status updates, they write weekly reports, they track scheduling, they monitor employee output.
And they pass that aggregated info up to the executives or down to the team. The classic spreadsheet jockey role, consolidating JIRA tickets and running Monday morning stand-up meetings.
Precisely. And an AI can do all of that aggregation, analysis, and reporting instantly, accurately, and at scale.
So the software itself becomes a management layer.
Yes, it can automatically assign tasks based on who has the most capacity, track the completion rate, and generate a performance matrix before the CEO even has breakfast.
Wow.
The OECD notes that this algorithmic management can deliver massive productivity and efficiency gains. It creates a much more agile, decentralized organization because you remove that human bottleneck.
Okay, I have to push back here on two fronts. First, 2026. That is practically tomorrow. I just don't see massive legacy corporations overhauling half their management structure in 24 months.
It's a fair point.
And second, middle management isn't just about reading spreadsheets and moving data around. It's about team morale. It's about empathy. It's a manager looking at an employee, realizing they look exhausted and sensing burnout before it happens.
Right.
Or, resolving a nuanced interpersonal conflict between two designers. Can an algorithm really do that?
Well, on your first point regarding the timeline, Gartner argues that the speed of current AI adoption is completely unprecedented because the infrastructure, things like Microsoft Copilot or enterprise Slack integrations, is already embedded in the tools companies use.
So they don't have to build anything.
Exactly. They don't have to build the AI, they just have to turn it on. But to your second point about empathy and burnout, that is the exact tension the research highlights.
Okay.
And Gartner's response to that in their 2028 prediction is quite profound. They forecast that within a few years, 40% of large enterprises will actually deploy AI to monitor and influence employee moods and behaviors.
Wait, what? You mean the AI is going to play therapist for the team?
Or it operates as a surveillance state, depending on the implementation.
Oh my gosh.
The mechanism here is real-time sentiment analysis on workplace communications. So the AI will scan the text of your Slack messages, your emails, your collaborative documents.
That feels so invasive.
It looks at sentence structure, response times, and vocabulary to assess the organizational culture and individual burnout levels in real time.
So instead of a human manager pulling me aside to ask how I'm doing, an algorithm is just reading the tone of my emails to decide if I'm stressed or likely to quit.
That is the mechanism, yes. And we have to look at the dual nature of this. The potential benefits could be significant for an organization.
Yeah.
If a company is going through a tough quarter, leadership can get an immediate data-driven pulse on company morale across thousands of employees and deploy targeted support. It theoretically catches burnout before the employee even formally reports it.
Okay, I see the logic.
But both the OECD and Gartner strongly warn about the severe risks here. There is a very thin line between a helpful culture check and invasive surveillance.
A very thin line.
Right. If an AI understands exactly what motivates you, what makes you anxious, or when you are most vulnerable, there is a documented risk of that system being used to manipulate employee behavior and productivity without their explicit consent.
That is a staggering shift in power dynamics within a company. But, okay, if AI is flattening these corporate hierarchies, automating management, and polarizing wages within a single office building, what happens when we zoom out?
On a global scale,
Yeah, what happens when we look at this on a planetary scale?
we see that same polarization, but amplified across borders. The International Monetary Fund, under Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, alongside a joint paper from the World Bank and the ILO, recently analyzed the global macroeconomic impact.
And the numbers are wild. The IMF says AI is poised to impact 40% of all jobs worldwide.
40%.
But it's not evenly distributed at all, right?
Okay.
Like in advanced economies, the exposure rate is 60%. But in low-income developing countries, it is only 26%.
Right.
Hold on, I'm looking at these numbers and something doesn't add up for me. If a low-income country's exposure to AI is less than half of ours, shouldn't they be the ones who are safe from the robots?
It sounds like they would be.
Right. Shouldn't a 26% exposure rate be a protective buffer?
It seems highly counterintuitive, I know, but the IMF explicitly calls this a troubling trend.
Why?
You have to remember the Iron Man suit analogy we used earlier. Advanced economies have a 60% exposure rate, yes, but they also have the capital and the infrastructure to harness the augmentation benefits.
Oh, I see.
They are going to see massive booms in productivity, corporate efficiency, and wealth generation because they can actually run the models.
So the developing nations aren't safe. They're just missing out on the upgrade entirely.
Exactly. The World Bank and ILO paper points out that developing nations risk facing the severe labor disruptions of AI long before they ever see the productivity benefits.
Because they can't run the suits.
Right. When we say they lack digital infrastructure, we aren't just talking about having a decent Wi-Fi connection. We are talking about massive, localized data centers.
The actual physical hardware.
Yes. Nationwide broadband grids, the electrical capacity to run localized AI models, and the educational systems required to train a workforce to use them. They simply lack the grid to equip their workers with those Iron Man suits.
So the advanced economies pull exponentially further ahead, hoarding all the productivity gains, while the developing economies get stuck dealing with the automated fallout.
Yes, it threatens to severely worsen global inequality. It creates a macroeconomic scenario where capital and productivity are hyper-concentrated in a few tech-forward nations.
That's terrifying.
The IMF notes this sparks an urgent need for global social safety nets, just to prevent massive socioeconomic destabilization in regions that are left behind.
Okay, so with algorithms reading our emails, middle managers disappearing, and the global wealth gap widening at this scale, the obvious question becomes, how do we actually protect ourselves in this environment?
Right, what are the safeguards?
Exactly. Who even owns our work? Let's transition and tackle the frequently asked questions of the future workplace.
It is a vital framework because the policy and legal response to this technology is just as important as the technological shift itself.
So FAQ number 1. Who owns my expertise if an AI learns to copy me? Like, if I train a language model on all my past work, my proprietary code, my writing style, and my specific way of solving niche problems, does the company just get to keep me forever?
This goes back to that startling Gartner prediction for 2027 that we touched on in the beginning.
The digital persona thing.
Right. They forecast that 70% of new employment contracts will include specific licensing and fair usage clauses for AI digital personas or avatars.
So they literally want a legal license to my brain.
Essentially, yes. As your behaviors, voice, and unique knowledge base are captured by corporate systems over years of work, they become a quantifiable corporate asset.
That is wild.
The mechanism is already there. The contracts of the future will have to explicitly define who owns that persona.
I mean, think about the implications. If you retire, or if you quit and go to a direct competitor, does your previous employer still have the right to spin up your AI avatar to consult on past projects?
Exactly. Do you get paid royalties for the work your digital ghost performs while you are asleep?
The legal frameworks for this simply do not exist yet, but it is going to be a massive, complex battleground for workers' rights. That is going to make salary negotiations incredibly weird. Yeah. Like, I want $90K a year, 4 weeks of vacation, plus 5% of whatever my avatar codes on the weekends.
It sounds like a joke, but it's really not far off.
Okay, FAQ number 2. With all of this algorithmic management or potential surveillance happening, is the government doing anything to protect us?
There is documented movement. Looking strictly at the policy frameworks being built, we can point to the U.S. Department of Labor. In October 2024, they released a comprehensive AI best practices roadmap for the workplace.
But this was built on the broader AI principles from the executive branch, wasn't it?
Yes. And the roadmap is specifically designed for developers and employers. It centers entirely on worker well-being.
Okay, how so?
Well, a key mechanism in their framework is the demand for meaningful human oversight for significant employment decisions.
So a robot can't just fire you.
Right. In practice, this means if an algorithm detects a 15% drop in your output and flags you for termination, it cannot just automatically send you a severance email. A human manager has to step in, review the raw data, context check the situation, and make the actual firing decision.
Okay, that's a relief.
The roadmap also strongly emphasizes data protection, securing worker data and demanding transparency so employees know exactly when and how AI is being used to evaluate their performance.
So there are operational guardrails being built, at least on paper. But that brings us to the biggest question, FAQ number 3. And this is the one that inevitably comes up whenever we talk about mass automation.
Universal basic income.
Should we just implement universal basic income, or UBI? If the self-driving cars take the foundational jobs, shouldn't government just cut everyone a monthly check to survive?
It is one of the most fiercely debated topics in global economics right now. We can look at a highly detailed 2025 paper by Dr. Tan Quan Hong, which critically explores UBI as a practical policy framework.
And what does Dr. Can say?
Looking strictly at the data from Dr. Tan's research, we see massive societal benefits, but also glaring macroeconomic flaws. UBI is absolutely not a silver bullet.
The benefits are compelling, though. Dr. Tan's paper outlines that UBI pilots show it definitively reduces poverty, it improves food security, and it significantly boosts mental health and life satisfaction.
Absolutely.
It completely removes that immediate terrifying panic of not being able to pay rent if your specific industry is automated overnight.
But you have to look at the macroeconomic mechanics of how a nationwide UBI actually functions. First, the sheer fiscal cost of providing a living wage to an entire population is astronomical.
Very true.
Second, and more importantly, is the risk of triggering severe inflationary pressures. If you implement UBI, you are injecting billions of dollars of demand into the economy. People suddenly have money to spend.
Right.
But if the supply of goods, housing, food, consumer products doesn't increase at the exact same rate, you just get inflation.
So landlords just raise the rent because they know everyone has an extra $2,000.
Exactly. The basic income essentially eats its own value.
So it sounds like UBI is like treating a severe fever with an ice pack. It brings the temperature down, it makes the patient feel much better and more stable in the moment.
But it doesn't actually cure the underlying infection.
Exactly. Which in this case is the massive skills gap.
That is an incredibly accurate way to synthesize Dr. Tan's findings. Because beyond the pure economics of inflation, a raw UBI ignores the non-monetary value of work.
That's a great point.
For a vast majority of people, a job provides vital social engagement, a sense of personal identity, and a structured daily purpose.
Right. It's not just a paycheck.
Exactly. If you just detach a massive segment of the population from traditional work structures, hand them a check, and tell them they are no longer economically useful, you hadn't solved the societal crisis of purposelessness.
So what is the actual cure then? If we can't just hand out ice packs, how do we fix the infection?
Both Dr. Tan's framework and the McKinsey data agree that any financial safety net has to be paired with massive, aggressive reskilling and active labor market policies.
Reskilling.
Right. McKinsey estimates that by 2030, the U.S. alone will need 12 million occupational transitions.
12 million, wow.
That means 12 million people entirely changing their career paths, not just getting a new job in the same field. We need a modern education system focused on lifelong learning. We have to actively teach people how to pilot the new Iron Man suits rather than just financially compensating them for losing the taxi.
It is a complete fundamental rewiring of how we value humans in the economy. And as we wrap up this detailed discussion of the source material, it is incredibly clear that we are staring down a profound duality.
We truly are. Generative AI has the unprecedented power to elevate human potential. It can remove the dull, repetitive, soul-crushing tasks from our daily lives and free us up for complex, creative, and highly strategic thinking.
It can make us vastly more productive.
Very capable, yes.
But without incredibly careful policies, robust worker protections, and a massive societal commitment to reskilling, it risks treating human beings like programmable machines.
And it risks drastically deepening the divide
between the global rich and the global poor,
Yeah.
and polarizing our own local neighborhoods between the augmented elite and the automated displaced.
The technology itself is just a tool. It is neutral. It's the human systems, the corporate structures, and the legal frameworks we build around it that will determine the final outcome.
And we want to know what you think that outcome will be. Thank you so much for joining us for this in-depth exploration here on the Dale English Class channel.
Yes, thank you for listening.
If this discussion got your gears turning, please hit that like button, share this video with your colleagues who might need a wake-up call, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our future analyses.
We really appreciate it.
But most importantly, get in the comments right now and tell us, which of these predictions do you think will happen first? Are you ready to report to an algorithmic boss?
It is a critical conversation, and we all need to be having it right now.
And as we sign off, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. We talked extensively about Gartner's predictions for flattened management and licensed digital personas.
Right, yeah.
But they have another quiet prediction for 2028. They forecast that 70% of organizations will be forced to adopt formal anti-digital policies just to combat tech addiction and AI-induced mental health crises among their staff.
That's a heavy thought.
So I have to ask ourselves, are we building technologies that serve humanity? Or are we actively restructuring humanity to serve the technology? And if you do sit down and sign that HR contract in 2027, well, what happens to your human identity when your digital persona outlives your actual career? Think about that the next time you pour your morning coffee.